So nigh is grandeur to our dust, so near is God to man. When duty whispers low, thou must, the youth replies, I can. Peril around, all else appalling. Cannon in front and leaden rain, him duty through the clarion calling, to the van called not in vain. This is Emerson, Courage.
Welcome back, everyone. It's been quite some time, but we're back at it, and this is gonna be a lot more consistent from now on. We got our setups, we got our, we got places without loud trains going by, so we're all good now. We're all good now. It's gonna be a great experience from here on forward, and the episodes will only get better. So why don't we begin with the beginning? So Emerson opens up by like he always likes to do. He starts with this really big claim, right? He starts with the big statement, and then he just uses the rest of the time to add the details. So he opens up. I observe that there are three qualities which conspicuously attract the wonder and reverence of mankind. The first one of these is disinterestedness, as shown in indifference to the ordinary bribes and influences of conduct, a purpose so sincere and generous that it cannot be tempted aside by any prospects of wealth or other private advantage.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I love how it starts here where he points out these three different characteristics that attract the wonder and reverence of mankind. Disinterestedness, well, we both had trouble with that one. Practical power and courage, what's interesting about this essay is that he only goes really deep into courage, but after reading the first two, I'm also interested in like a writing from him about disinterestedness or practical power, which I haven't
Hmm.
found yet, but maybe I'll get through. But where he says that, what he says about disinterestedness, he's talking about men who can't be tempted by wealth or private advantage. And why this stands out so much to people, he says, is because self love is in almost all men such an overweight that they are incredulous of a man's habitual preference of the general good to his own. So basically, he's saying people love themselves so much that they find it unbelievable and incredible when a man puts the things that he prefers over his own general good.
Right, like his principles, his community, his family, all these things are foreign to us, other than just our safety and our success or whatever.
So they're skeptical. Most people are skeptical of seeing people do this, but when they see it proved by sacrifice of ease, wealth, rank, and of life itself, there's no limit to their admiration. So when people see a self-sacrificing person, because they live in such a state where they're constantly trying to protect their wealth, protect their rank and status in life, protect their life itself, because most people place such a high price on that and aren't willing to throw those things away. When they see a man or a person that is willing to throw those things away for what they believe in, they automatically admire or revere that person.
And to me, that's a big reason why Donald Trump got so much fervent popularity, because he's this seemingly billionaire tapped into all these like corrupt entities and whatnot, and he he on the cert like he seemingly like threw that all away to help fix the country for this like noble cause. And a lot of people saw that, and they instinctively knew like this is a noble act that he's overtaking.
I like how he ends his piece on this. He says that self-sacrifice is the real miracle out of which all reported miracles grew.
Mm,
And it's actually kind of difficult for me to unpack that. But at the base level, I feel like what he's saying is that everything we have is, if you trace it all back, there's a self-sacrifice involved always. Self-sacrifice is what really moves everything forward,
right.
right? Like your parents sacrifice their lives, their time, their energy for your survival,
Hmm.
right? And like every great land that has been conquered, every war that's been fought and won it's all been due to self-sacrifice. Every discovery, everything goes back to self-sacrifice.
Right.
Self-sacrifice is the real miracle out of which all reported miracles grew. Humanity is built off people sacrificing their own interests for the good of either for the people they care about and the people they love and the people they want to protect.
Right. And in our modern media landscape, self pleasure, not self sacrifice, is pushed way more consistently, and it's warped in the sense that like all the good from life will come from self pleasure, when in reality it's sacrifice for the greater good, which will bring not only the best out of you, but will that'll stake your mark in history.
Now, the second thing that he says that attracts the reverence of mankind is practical power. He says, men admire the man who can organize their wishes and thoughts in stone and wood and steel and brass, the man who can build the boat, who has the impiety to make the rivers run the way he wants them, who can lead his telegraph through the ocean from shore to shore, who, sitting in his closet, can lay out the plans of a campaign, sea war and land war, such that the best generals and admirals, when all is done, see that they must thank him for success. The power of better combination and foresight, however exhibited, whether it only plays a game of chess or whether more loftily, a cunning mathematician penetrating the cubic weight of the stars, predicts the planet which eyes had never seen, or whether, exploring the chemical elements where we in the world are made, and seeing their secret, Franklin draws off the lightning in his hand, suggesting that one day a wiser geology shall make the earthquake harmless and the volcano an agricultural resource. Or here is one who, seeing the wishes of men, knows how to come at their end, whispers to this friend, argues down that adversary, molds society to his purpose, and looks at all men as wax for his hands, takes command of them as the wind does of clouds, as the mother does of the child, or the man that knows more does of the man that knows less, and leads them in glad surprise to the very point where they would be. This man is followed with acclamation.
Banger,
So
banger as usual.
what he's basically saying here is greatness commands respect. Men respect men that are capable men. And
Right.
the word capable actually comes from word kapari and capabilis, which means able to grasp or hold.
Hmm.
And able means having sufficient power or means. So when men are saying we respect somebody that's capable, we respect someone that's able to grasp or hold sufficient power or means to do the things that they need to do.
Yeah, and there's kind of I mean, as you know, there's kind of this inbuilt confidence or courage, as we can call it, that comes when you know, in fact, that you are deeply skilled at something, or you're on the brink of a discovery or something great. There comes this inner knowing that what you're doing is right, and b you are self actualizing your own skill set, and that naturally, in a natural state, that brings a lot of courage and a lot of just gusto for life.
And people have to respect you for the things you're good at. They
Mm-hmm.
can't take those things away from you. They don't have to like you, but they have to respect you for it. People say Kanye West is crazy, but he makes great music, right? Or I don't like Jeff Bezos that much, but he knows how to make money and run a business,
Right.
right? So like when you're great at something, people have to respect you for it, whether they like you or not.
Yeah, and basically, I mean, you've seen this. Everybody that argues that people who have done like you're talking about Jeff Bezos, like it's pretty much it's impossible to argue that he's a great man in terms of the his deliverables that he's brought into this world. The scale and the mindset and the results he's gotten, the millions he's employed, the billions he's made, all that stuff. It's pretty hard to debate that is greatness, whether or not you like him or not.
Right, exactly. And as I read more Emerson, I either start to see similarities in other writers or just pieces that they've completely ripped or rewrote from him or remixed from him.
Mm-hmm.
And the last part here actually reminds me of Will Durant, where he's like, Here's a man who, seeing the wishes of men, knows how to come at their end, whispers to his friend, argues down the adversary, molds society to his purpose, looks at men as wax for his hands, takes command of them as wind does of clouds, as the mother does of the child, or the man that knows more does of the man that knows less. And it reminds me of a Will Durant quote that I've always remembered, where he says, "The men who can manage men manage the men who can only manage things, and the men who can manage money manage all." And
Interesting.
I felt like a little bit of similarity there, but that's like the truth of society. It's so funny because like the men who manage the money are actually the ones that are managing everything.
Right, right. They control the incentive structure, basically.
But the men who can manage men, it's like two ends of the spectrum. You got a group of men that can manage money, but the men who manage men also are able to get things done as well.
Yeah, yeah. Because think of like popular activists, right? And like movies of men, like Jesus Christ, Gandhi, like these people that we have staked in history as leaders of movements and whatnot, right? It wasn't the money that brought them, right? It was the raw influence and their gift to connect to another human and make them, you know, make them realize their own potential and want to follow them.
Yeah, and to be honest, there's some more hints of that later in this essay where
Hmm.
he talks about what it is that people exhibit that makes other people drawn to their aim and to their cause.
Right.
And
And I just want to make a note here too for everyone. I would really recommend that you, as with all these, you don't just listen to this, you read them as well, because these metaphors and these images that he writes down are so beautiful. They're just so nice. They flow. The image comes perfectly in your head. He has such a mastery of the artistry of language.
yeah, like I can only attempt to read it well enough for you to grasp it. But like for you to really grasp it, you have to read it yourself. And honestly, I gain new insights every time I read this. So even if you listen to me and you get some sort of insight off of it, you may get a different insight on your own when you read it.
Right. 100%. Definitely,
So
I would highly recommend. Yeah, read this thing.
after talking about disinterestedness and practical power, the third thing that makes men revere you is courage. And he opens it off by saying, "The third excellence is courage, the perfect will, which no terrors can shake, which is attracted by frowns or threats or hostile armies. Nay, needs these to awake and fan its reserved energies into a pure flame, and it is never quite itself until the hazard is extreme. Then it is serene and fertile, and all its powers play well." So I do want to go over this really quickly. He says, "The perfect will which no terrors can shake, which is attracted by frowns, threats, or hostile armies." And then he says, "Nay." So, nay here means actually, or rather. So he's basically saying this courage is attracts frowns, threats, and hostile armies. Or more likely, it needs those to awake and fan its reserved energies into a pure flame. And why this is really powerful for me is because it reminds me of my probably first or second favorite Nietzsche quote, where he says, "If a man wants to become a hero, the serpent must first become a dragon. Otherwise, he lacks his proper energy."
Mm.
Right? So, this is the same thing this is what actually got me. Remember, I sent you, I was like, oh, I wonder if Nietzsche
I was just about to
reads
say
Emerson.
you should go into this little tangent right here. It's very interesting.
Right. So, when I first saw this quote, I was like, man, this sounds exactly like Nietzsche. And then I was like, well, who took from who? And then obviously Emerson is born 40 years before him. And I've never researched these two people together, but if you start researching Nietzsche and Emerson, you'll start finding all these doctorates of philosophy talking about how Emerson was probably the most influential person on Nietzsche that there was. He seems to criticize every single philosopher of the time, major philosophers like Schopenhauer, Kant, all these people that are still big time today. He criticized all of them. He never criticized Emerson. And I guess when they found his personal belongings, right, he had so many different translations of Emerson works. All his books were full of notes and underlines, and it had been clear that he had been reading and studying from him since he was a young boy. So it's interesting because this quote, if a man wants to become a hero, the serpent must first become a dragon, otherwise he lacks his proper enemy. It's exactly what Emerson was saying about how courage only rises when it has the proper foe for it to arise. Like you can't just be courageous without having an obstacle in front of you.
It totally makes sense. In my own life, obviously I'm no great man on the level of all the figures that he talks about, the Achilles, the Scipio, the Caesars, all these guys. I'm not putting myself up there, but when I'm dealing with a challenge or work or something, and even if it's financially rewarding, but if it's not stimulating and it's not like pushing me to my edge, it's not engaging whatsoever, and I don't get that sense of fulfillment from it. So you really have to you really if you want to make this as simple as possible, you really have to chase your edge. You really have to chase your edge.
Right. That's where the great things are going to occur. They're not going to occur in the middle. And that's when the best part of you is going to come out.
That separates the true kings, the true statesmen, from the royalty who enjoy the fruits of royalty, the grapes and the massages and the palaces, but not the actual leadership and the hard decisions.
He goes on to say, it is said that courage is common, but the immense esteem in which it is held proves it to be rare. And this is just like earlier when he was talking about self-sacrifice. He's like, so many people are so in love with themselves, and when they see a self-sacrificing person, it's amazing to them.
Yep.
And if courage was common, then we wouldn't revere it so much.
Right.
But the fact that we value it shows you how rare it is. And he goes on to say the animal resistance, the instinct of the male when cornered, is no doubt common. So the when you're backed into a corner, it's easy, right? Like any animal you back into a corner is going to strike out at you. It's just an instinct. It's a natural instinct. It says, but the pure article, courage with eyes, courage with conduct, self-possession at the cannon's mouth, cheerfulness and lonely adherence to the right, is the endowment of elevated characters. I need not show how much is it esteemed, for the people give it the first rank. They forgive everything to it. Right? So like they forget everything to it. Like think about someone like Julius Caesar, right? Like he's like a right wing icon. Probably killed millions of people, like the Celtic Gauls. Like I remember learning about the Celtic Holocaust, they call it, or that's what Dan Carlin called it. It's a great episode of his Hardcore History, and he talks about how Julius Caesar basically just did how he rose to power was this campaign against the Germanic Celts and Gauls, where he's just they massacred millions of people, and guess what? We hold him in high esteem for it because he's brave, right? Or same thing with like someone like Genghis Khan, who the Mongols had all sorts of crazy ways to torture people and lay siege and or just hoarding and raiding all these different villages, but we admire him because of courage. So for courage, we seem to forgive all things.
Mm. Yeah, it's really like the intent of the action, and the desire to pursue it for greatness' sake can come out of like overwhelm all sort of like the moral questioning we can have with it.
Right, exactly. We'll put that above anything else. It's pretty incredible actually. And he goes on to say, any man who puts his life in peril in a cause which is esteemed becomes the darling of all men.
Yeah, you might not like the guy, right? But you have to, on some very deep part of you respects that from any man.
All right, let's keep reading on. So he says, men are so charmed with valor that they have pleased themselves with being called lions, leopards, eagles, and dragons from the animals contemporary with us in the geologic formations. That actually reminds me of something I read in Nature, which we'll talk about another time. It says, but the animals have great advantage of us in precocity. Touch the snapping turtle with a stick, and he seizes it with his teeth. Cut off his head, and the teeth will not let go the stick. Break the egg of the young, and the little embryo, before yet the eyes are open, bites fiercely. These vivacious creatures contriving, shall we say, not only to bite after they are dead, but also to bite before they are born. But man begins life helpless. The babe is paroxysms of fear the moment its nurse leaves it alone. And it comes so slowly to any power of self protection that mothers say the salvation of the life and health of the young child is a perpetual miracle. The terrors of the child are quite reasonable and add to his loveliness. For his utter ignorance and weakness and his enchanting indignation on such a small basis of capital compel every bystander to take his part. Every moment, as long as he is awake, he studies the use of his eyes, ears, hands, and feet, learning how to meet and avoid his dangers, and thus every hour loses one terror more. But this education stops too soon. A large majority of men being bred in families and beginning early to be occupied day by day with some routine of safe industry never come to the rough experiences that make the Indian, the soldier, or the frontiersman self subsistent and fearless. Hence, the high price of courage indicates the general timidity.
Very interesting. That last sentence right there.
So, in the beginning, what he's saying is he's referring back to like everybody has, there's a base animal instinct to defend yourself. And some animals are inborn with it. Like he's, when he starts talking about the snapping turtle, he's basically saying like snapping turtle is just going to snap because it's a snapping turtle. But for a person to do the same type of thing, it's different, right? Like they have to be courageous.
Right.
Not something that just comes naturally. It's something that you either have to intentionally do. And he will go on to say that there are some natural forms of courage, but it's different for us. We have to go out of our way to do it.
Yeah, we have this innate respect for people who can transcend the inner animal and like do things for
Who
do
can
things
go
for
past self preservation.
right, exactly. Self-preservation, self-pleasure. When we see something like that, we're just wired to respect it.
And he goes, a large majority of men being bred in families and beginning early to be occupied day by day with some routine of safe industry never come to the rough experiences that make the Indian, the soldier, or the frontiersman. Hence, the high price of courage indicates the general timidity. So he's talking about how we kind of live this safe, industrious life, and we never experience the things that make all the courageous men that we respect. And the he's saying like you can see that by how much we value courage, you can see how much natural timidity there is in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because we only value things that are rare.
Right. Anybody bucking the system now like gets the love of mankind
Right.
because it's so rare for people to go against the established narrative. Like nowadays, we praise people that don't even fully go against the established narrative.
Right. We could praise someone like Elon Musk.
Yeah, we praise
Who
like
could,
Elon Musk and Joe
who could,
Rogan when like they
because
actually don't believe half the things that most
yeah,
of us
yeah.
believe. But
Like
just because they went against it a little bit, they're praised. Like imagine someone that goes full bore against it.
we praise Elon Musk because he tweets out like a Biden meme or something, and we think that's some like brave state of courage. But we don't. We're so inoculated to a real line pusher these days.
Right. Yeah. It's like all you have to do to impress people now is and make them think that you're radical is send out a yes meme.
Yeah.
Like or like a Giga Chad meme. And it's like
Yep.
that shows you the general timidity of the society that we live in.
Yep.
Where that's all it takes. Where it's like actually like the guys who are like courageous to me are kind of like and this is actually when you're saying like, oh, you forgive everything to it. It's like I kind of like the Marvin Heemeyer types, Killdozer, or like Sky King, or like Ted Kaczynski, like people who are really like they really were willing to sacrifice their life. It wasn't just worrying about posting a meme and getting their social media account canceled. Like they were way beyond that.
Yeah.
They were like, I'm willing to risk my life for what I believe in and for what I want. And like that to me is like the type of people that we have to respect more. So, cowardice shuts the eyes until the sky is not larger than a calf skin. Shuts the eyes so that we cannot see the horse that is running away with us. Worse, shuts the eyes of the mind and chills the heart. Fear is cruel and mean. The political reigns of terror have been reigns of madness and malignity, a total perversion of opinion. Society is upside down, and its best men are thought too bad to live.
That first part's very interesting because like think back to when you were a kid and something like what is the standard fearful pose? It's to put your head down, to cover your eyes, to physically shrink up and whatnot. And that's kind of like the metaphor that he's playing out here, right? Like when you're stricken with cowardice, your entire world shrinks and you become so focused on immediate self-preservation that it can enable some pretty terrible things in itself.
And the last part is just, and it just sounds like today.
Yep.
It says the political reigns of terror have been reigns of madness and malignity, a perversion of opinion. Society is upside down, a complete inversion. And its best men are thought too bad to live. Like that,
And
they shouldn't exist or be allowed to communicate.
and he's writing this in the mid 1800s. So if he would see it, if he like woke up today and saw what was going on, he would have a stroke.
And it reminds me of it kind of reminds me again of what he was saying in self-reliance. And he says that in self-reliance, he says, in the protest which each considerate person makes against the superstition of his times, he step for step repeats the part of the old reformers. Right? And like that's the men that are too bad to live now. Like now we have the responsibility of being the people that reform society.
Right. Well, what he said, society is not like you shouldn't wrong a man for being unhealthy in a sick society, something like that.
Did he say that?
I swear he wrote something like that.
It's pretty fire.
Yeah. Yeah, like how can you expect a man to be healthy in a sick society? Something along those lines. I'm butchering it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really judge that many people these days because, like, I mean, where would the average person go to know better?
Right.
Yeah. They've only been taught to respect the opinion of people that can make money or are good at sports or are famous or that are good at making music. They don't have any real heroes or idols that are actually doing really great things. So, everywhere they go on the internet, the algorithms show them what they want them to see. They're in a school system that is run by certain ideologies. It's like most people, like say for instance, like we have a small corner of the internet. Like how many people in the world do you think actually even know that exists?
Yeah, I have to constantly remind myself multiple times a day, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do.
Yeah, like people don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I expect them to be sick and not to understand things. I don't expect them to get it. Like they're completely surrounded on all fronts. Where are they going to go to get an honest opinion?
Well, when you first wake up, we're using that terminology. I know. When you first wake up, your first thing is, well, you're amazed at like all the stuff. You're really focused on like, oh my God, look at all these lies that they're telling. And then the first thing you want to do is go tell a bunch of people and whatever. And when they don't immediately, realize the same thing that you do, you get angry and you want to lash out against them and you get vengeful that they can't see what's right in front of them. But you really have to realize that it's everybody's journey at the end of the day. And some people aren't going to get it, and some people will get it when it's time for them. But
and some people are more blessed than others to be able to see through things.
Yep.
They have more like an intuitive view of things and are more in touch with their inner voice and can feel and sense when things are off better.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep using it. I hate this term, like waking up. I don't like it for some reason. But 2017, 2018, that's when I like really started to, see things in a different light and whatnot. But there's, I knew people who growing up had parents who were telling them this stuff, when they were a kid, and like they grew up in a totally different path where like I had to come into it. They were just born into that life. And so, there's always another level.
So I think of this often, but there's an interesting part here that was pretty entertaining. He says, those political parties which gather in the well-disposed portion of the community. Well disposed meaning like friendly, sympathetic, nice. Like think your average suburbs, right? He says those political parties that gather in those areas, how infirm, which means weak and ignoble. What white lips they have. When he says white lips, he's talking to fear. It's an expression that says that someone's afraid. They're white
Yeah,
lipped.
like the blood gets rushed from your face.
Right. So he goes, what white lips they have, always on defenses, as if the lead were entrusted to the journals, often written in great part by women and boys, who, without strength, wish to keep up the appearance of strength. They can do the hurrahs, they can do the placarding. Placarding is like making signs, like you see at some of these protests. They can do the hurrahs, the placarding, the flags, and the voting, if it is a fair day. But the aggressive attitude of men who will have right done will no longer be bothered with burglars and ruffians in the streets, counterfeiters in public offices, and thieves on the bench. That part, the part of the leader and soul of the vigilance committee, must be taken by stout and sincere men who are really angry and determined.
It's so beautiful.
It's amazing that it's exactly what's going on today.
It really is.
It's like all these white-lipped, fearful people are mostly boys, so low T guys, and women who, without strength, want the appearance of it. And all they do is gather and scream and make signs and try to vote their way into everything. But he's like, that's not what changes society. Like, what changes society is the aggressive attitude of men who will have right done. They go into the neighborhood, they're going to clean up the streets, the burglars, the ruffians. They rip the counterfeiters out of office. They go round up the bankers, right? Like, if you want changes, it must be done by stout and sincere men who are angry and determined. That's the only way it's going to happen. Like, you can go and listen to like your Tulsi Gabbard clips and watch Tucker Carlson and all that. That's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that's going to change society are the strong men in it
taking action.
Very
specific action.
Like, the police aren't going to clean up your neighborhood and clean up inner cities. Like, if you really wanted to get cleaned up, men would have to go in and clean it up.
No. I mean, it's really funny. The right, they have this. We gotta, they have this back the blue thing, but then like the FBI for the past 6 years has just been hunting down, right leaning people and journalists and stuff and forging crimes and doing all these things. It's like, no, these authorities themselves aren't going to save you. Like, it doesn't matter that they have guns and like the foot soldiers might vote kind of the way you do. It doesn't matter. The infrastructure itself is totally corrupt. And I want to ask you this because I know you're looking at these things. What does he mean by thieves on the bench?
Let me find it. Thieves on the bench. I mean, well, politicians who use tax money and laws to advance their own interests. Right?
Yeah.
Like a good example would be like what Biden did with Ukraine when he was the vice president.
Right.
Taking tax dollars from the U.S., using it as leverage to line his own pockets.
So I assume with bench he means like the legislative and judicial bodies.
Right. Like, I think Bill Clinton did a similar thing where like when he was a governor, he made some sort of laws where you could get government funding for like schools or something. And then like all his homies opened up schools or something. And then they just started getting checks from the government for it, which is it's not the government's money, it's your money.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Right.
Little quick tangent about the Clinton house. I went to their like where their house is in Fayetteville, Arkansas, like the first house, whatever, when when he was the governor or whatever. And it's right across from a middle school. So we'll just leave that there. We'll just leave that there.
And so this whole little piece is funny because he goes on to talk about politics, and it literally mirrors what happens nowadays, where he's like, when we get an advantage, as in Congress the other day, something must have happened back then, but he says, when we get an advantage as in Congress the other day, it's because our adversary has committed a fault, not that we have taken the initiative and given the law. And this is like exactly why I don't consider myself a conservative or get involved in like conservative politics, because it's completely reactionary. Like, conservatism doesn't do anything except slow down progressivism.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't actually stop it. And every victory these conservatives claim, it's like when they caught somebody doing something or
Right.
they revealed some sort of lie or truth. It's not because they went and actually changed the way things are run or done.
Right. Yeah, like I'm, it's part of the other. It's just the other side of the dialectic. It's not like the way out. We have to wait for we have to be pushing the synthesis, not the wings of the dialectic.
Right. Like every position that was like a left wing position like 15 years ago is like a right wing position now. Like right wing people are all for like gay marriage and all this stuff like that. They weren't 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, even
Now they
Obama
just
in '07 was come out saying like marriage is between a man and a woman, and now it's like, you know, that we're so beyond past that.
right. Like they're fighting trans rights and things like that. Look, I guarantee you by next presidential election, they'll be touting all conservative transgender people. Like it's gonna happen. They're already doing it with
Caitlyn Jenner, right?
yeah, with Bruce. They're already doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah,
it's like
Bruce Jenner. Yeah,
so like this is exactly what he's talking about. It's like whenever we gain any grounds because they messed up. It's not because we took initiative and made something happen.
yeah,
And that's why I think people believe in accelerationism, where it's like this can't be fixed. It's just got to break first. So the best thing you can do is speed it up,
yeah.
right?
Yep. And then
Um,
there's like there's there's the other angle too where you aren't maybe accelerationist yourself, but you know that that's coming and that's happening, and so you're preparing for that future, but you're not actively participating. You're noticing the trends and stuff, and you're just taking care of your own shit.
he says immediately after that, which this is great because it reminds this is another person that it reminds me of, which is it reminds me of a Teddy Roosevelt quote. But he says that nature has made up her mind that what cannot defend itself shall not be defended. So complaining never so loud and with never so much reason is of no use. Nature has made up her mind that what cannot defend itself shall not be defended. So if you don't stand your ground, you deserve to lose, right? Teddy Roosevelt has a speech, one of my favorite speeches, called The Strenuous Life. And in it, he says, when men fear work or fear righteous war, when women fear motherhood, they tremble on the brink of doom. And well it is that they should vanish from the earth, where they are the fit subjects for the scorn of all men and women who are themselves strong and brave and high minded. So nature has made up her mind that what cannot defend itself should not be defended. And it's like when men fear righteous war, when women fear motherhood, they tremble on the brink of doom, and well it is that they should vanish from the earth. They deserve it. Nature shouldn't protect things like this because they don't protect themselves.
Right? It's just yelling. That's all it is. That's all politics is these days. Is just yelling in a direction that you think is bad, but doing absolutely nothing to secure a future, like defend a principle.
Yeah, and I remember I think Roosevelt was mentioning this because
And
some writer named Daudet was like have like some melancholy book where he spoke about the fear of maternity, which is in the fear of maternity, the haunting terror of the young life of the present day. It was like the headline.
yeah,
And Roosevelt was like, when such words can truthfully be written of a nation, that nation is rotten to the heart's core.
yep.
And then he goes into the part where he's like, yeah, they should vanish from the earth if that's what they think.
It,
So it's
it's
like,
it's really it's really funny with all these sort of
you don't
old
stand for anything, you deserve to fall.
yeah, with all these old examples too, like Roosevelt calling the country rotten because a guy wrote an article like saying like maybe you should be a young mother. Like Matt, and that he's going that hard on that. You just think like not only how hard would they go today on these things, like they would be calling for like new Salem witch trials basically, but how soft like our supposedly hard guys are. Like you're talking about, the goalposts have moved so much.
It really
It's
has. But it also makes me question how I see the timing of everything. Because people often ask me, they're like, oh, when do you think things are going to get really bad? And it's actually very hard to say because our lives are such a blink of an eye on a societal scale.
mm-hmm.
It's hard to tell because I mean, you can read the same problems we're dealing with now were happening 200 years ago, and things didn't completely break yet. Are they broken? Yes. Are they
And yeah,
shattered?
and it's funny too. Like we look back, and we're like, oh, dude, like the early 1900s, like this was like we got all these past eras of history. These are utopias in our like romanticized view looking back, and then you go back to their writing, and they're writing about the exact same problems that we're dealing with.
Right. And it's like, so I can't be like, oh, it's going to happen in like 10 years or 15 years or something like that. I don't know, because this has been like a progressive thing that's happened over the course of like a couple hundred
Yeah,
years, you know? And
and
even if you go and like read like a book about like Hagakure, where they talk about how the samurai were getting softer. And it's just like, this has just been going on since modernity. You
yep,
know?
it's an eternal happening, and I also think too, what Emerson has a great reverence for history and massive time scales and eons and all these things like that. And um, like with our social media brains, we expect instant results and instant things happening and instant this and instant that. So we're expecting things to just crash and explode and be fiery and rip our dopamine, but in reality, it's gonna just probably be more of this slow decline and shapeshift, over a long period of time.
I do think the internet has accelerated things though. Like I think
Yes.
it's sped things up tremendously where it's like I've seen it in most people's attitudes where they hit that nihilist stage really hard,
Yeah.
fast. Like once they like I've quote unquote red pilled a few people recently. So
Right.
I've been able to see what the process is like nowadays where someone like puts the they live like glasses on
Yeah.
and starts to like see what's really going on. And like the nihilism that it took me like 2 years to reach, like they reach it in like 90 days, you know?
Right.
And then like you come out on the other side of it where you come into like the kind of clown world view of it where it's like everything's just like a comedy. It's like
Right.
actually just funny and hilarious and ridiculously absurd. And like you can't really do anything except surrender to hope that things are going to be better. But it's amazing to watch people go through the processes now because what took me was like a 3 year process for me. It can happen to someone in like 6 months now.
Yeah, that is true. I just think, and I'm not disagreeing. I just think generally our timelines and our time perception is just much faster, and we're expecting things to happen on social media speed when a lot of these structures and things that we look at still happen on a normal timeline.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I can see that as well. I agree exactly with that. It's like, yeah, it still takes time in the real world for things to happen.
Exactly. But yeah, like what you're saying, people are, yeah, like I'm seeing people in coffee shops now talk about, and talk about having opinions and things that that type of person would not hold 2 years ago. Like, wouldn't even be thinking about those.
So this is the last little piece that he says about politics before he just switches on to just talking about courage again. He says, "What cannot stand must fall, and the measure of our sincerity and therefore the respect of men is the amount of health and wealth we will hazard in the defense of our right." He said, "An old farmer, my neighbor across the fence, when I ask him if he's not going to town meeting, says, 'No, it's no use balloting, for it will not stay. But what you do with the gun will stay so.'" So that's pretty funny. It's a little anecdotal story about a guy across the street who doesn't go to town meetings because he's like, you can't vote your way out of this. You could shoot your way out of it. Like, get rid of ballots and start using bullets.
Already.
So nature has charged every one of us with his own defense, as with his own support. And the only title I can have to your help is when I have manfully put forth all the means I possess to keep me. And being overdone by odds, the bystanders have a natural wish to interfere and see fair play. This is actually an incredible little piece. I think we mentioned earlier how self sacrifice is the miracle out of which all miracles grew. And it's like, how do you win people to your side? How do you lead men? It's like when people see you, the only time you can really ask for people's help is when you've put forth all the means you possess. And when people see someone fighting for a just reason and sacrificing everything they have and the odds being against them, that's when the bystanders have a wish to interfere and see fair play. They want to see the odds even.
Mm.
It's the old underdog story. Like everybody wanted to see Rocky beat the Russian. Why? Because he was smaller and it was dangerous and he wasn't juiced up. Well, of course he was juiced up for that movie, but like but like he was the underdog. He was like he was just hard work and grit. And when people see someone fighting for the right reason, fighting with everything they have against something that's bigger than themselves, that's when they step in. That's when they help you. It's just like you can't help anybody to help yourself. It works the same way in business. Like people aren't going to give you an opportunity until they see that you're working your hardest to get every opportunity. This is just how life works. Like if
Right.
you want to receive the help and aid and respect and support of other people, you have to be sacrificing and risking and doing it for good reasons. And then that's when people are going to step in and play a part in your success. That's when people have a natural desire to see the the odds be even, to see there be fair play, to see they want. We love it when the right people get opportunity.
Right.
As a
100%.
species, we love it when good, like it's, and this is like beyond any sort of politics. Like everybody loves it when good things happen to good people.
This reminds me of a Napoleon Hill quote, and I cannot find it. I cannot find it. Basically, the idea, like I saw it yesterday, and it's very much aligned with this. Like work, like basically when you first, first you're first starting out to do something, overperform, put so much quality into it that eventually what you're going to get paid for it and compensated and networked with will be more than what you're putting in, because just the raw quality in there you're putting in there, not you're not doing the job just to get the money, you're doing it because you have such a dedication to quality and for just like your own self-fulfillment that this must be done to absolute excellence, and you will get rewarded for that.
Yep. Once you look, the world doesn't work in a way where it rewards undeserving people. The quickest way to have what you want is to deserve what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you deserve what you want, the door's open for you. That's just how it works. And so that's the only time you can't ask God for help if you're doing nothing, right? When you start doing something and putting forth effort, that's when the help will come. That's when you're in a position to be like, hey, give me some backing. Like I'm pushing and doing everything I can here.
Right. You pray for assistance and for guidance. You don't pray for the thing. Like doesn't he talk about that in Self Reliance? He
Yes,
talks
he
about how
does
you,
talk about. Yes, he talks
yeah, you
about
should, you
prayer.
don't
Yeah,
pray. If you pray for something like, oh, I want $1 million, God, give me that, you ain't getting that. And in fact, you'll probably get struck down in my experience. But if you pray for, like, show me the path to how I could become somebody to make millions of dollars, right? That's a lot more open. That's something that, the light will turn on. You will see the light, and you'll get on that path right away if your eyes are open. And he goes on, right? He goes on continuing bashing the these people with these white lips. But with this specific education, we have no readiness for bad times. I am much mistaken if every man who went to the army in the late war had not a lively curiosity to know how he should behave in action. Tender, amiable boys who had never encountered any rougher play than a baseball match or a fishing excursion were suddenly drawn up to face a bayonet charge or capture a battery. Of course, they must each go into that action with a certain despair. Each whispers to himself, "My exertions must be of small account to the result. Only will the what is this word?
benignant,
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 benignant.
benignant heaven save me from disgracing myself and my friends and my state. Die! Oh yes, I can well die, but I cannot afford to misbehave, and I do not know how I shall feel." So basically, what he's talking about is, and by the late war, he's referring to the Civil War, and the last year and a half of the Civil War was basically just like the first half of the Civil War, very close. The Confederates nearly took D.C. if not for a few small, tactical decisions. But by the end of the war, with Sherman's march going on, with the ramped up Union production, with the fact that um, the Confederates weren't able to get British supplied arms and stuff anymore, that it was total domination from the Union. And so a lot of these soldiers that go into the war by the end, they just get old enough to get drafted or whatever. They're not actually they don't have any combat experience really at all. They're not veterans of the campaign. And so they're going in and they're going to this fight that's basically almost won. So I think that's an interesting context for this.
I like this part where he's like, I knew a young soldier who died in the early campaign, who confided to his sister that he had made up his mind to volunteer for the war. I have not, he said, any proper courage, but I shall never let anyone find it out. I love that part. He said, and then he accustomed himself always to go into whatever place of danger and do whatever he was afraid to do, setting a dogged resolution to resist this natural infirmity.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's like courage isn't not having fear. Courage is acting in spite of fear.
Yes. Yes.
Right? It's not just like you don't feel anything or you're not afraid or you're not skeptical of what could happen to you. It's just like that doesn't matter.
Yep. Every time, then it's funny too. I mean, you probably know this too. Every time you go into an MMA sparring match, right? Especially if you've done it for a while, you go in, you have the gloves on, the bell rings, and you're a bit tense initially. Like you haven't felt a strike in a long time. And you go in there and you get busted up the first minute or whatever, but then you feel, okay, I know what this guy feels like now. I can get into this, and it just allows you to keep pushing forward. But you know, the other path you could take is you get hit a couple times. Oh, that's harder than I remembered, and you just shell up, and you're on defense mode the whole time, and you're not learning, you're not growing, and you're not actualizing with that.
Right. He actually ends up talking about this concept a little bit later on. But now after this, he starts transitioning to talking about what fear is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically how to overcome it. And what he says is knowledge is the antidote to fear. Knowledge, use, and reason with its higher aids. The child is as much in danger from a staircase or the fire grate or a bathtub or a cat as the soldier from a cannon or an ambush. Each surmounts the fear as fast as he precisely understands the peril and learns the means of resistance. Each is liable to panic, which is exactly the terror of ignorance surrendered to the imagination. So, what's interesting here is that the antidote for fear is knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge of knowing what's going to happen, and fear and terror is ignorance surrendered to the imagination. So I put it, fear is ignorance surrendered to the imagination. So what that means is not knowing about something or being uncertain plus imagination leads to your mind creating countless inaccurate outcomes of how bad it could be.
Right. Like it's always like the horror movie, right? You open the door, the house is completely dark, right? And you're just imagining, oh, the monster's in there somewhere, right?
Right.
But,
that's what fear is. Fear is not having knowledge and letting your imagination run wild with that.
Yep.
Because what's going to happen is you're just going to think of the worst possible outcomes over and over again. But knowledge is the encourager, he says. Knowledge takes fear out of the heart. Knowledge and use, which is knowledge and practice. So he's saying you can't just know, right? Like you can't just know that rejection doesn't hurt you in the long run. You have to just go, you have to actually go and use that knowledge and experience it. Right? Like knowledge, like you can't just know that when you go into a sparring session, you're still going to be alive after 5 minutes. Like you have to go in and experience it. You have to put that knowledge into practice.
Yep. Yeah, once you do it a couple of times, it gets easier every single time to go in there.
Right. So like knowledge alone, knowledge is going to help you approach the fear better. But it's the knowledge and the use of that knowledge which is going to help you overcome fear completely. So knowledge, this is the way you take the fear out of your heart, is what he's saying.
Yeah. So, if you want like a metaphor I just thought of right now is like it's like drawing a picture, right? At first you have a blank page and there's nothing there. But first, when you have the knowledge is like drawing the outline and the penciling and stuff. And putting it into practice is like coloring it in for a full picture.
he goes on to say,
Oh, one thing I want to talk about, that the passage right before, talking about Coleridge and his story in the Navy. I think this was a very interesting anecdote. Um, he says before, this is a paragraph up if you're following along the reading. He says Coleridge has preserved an anecdote of an officer in the British Navy who told him that when he, in his first boat expedition, a midshipman in his 14th year, accompanied Sir Alexander Ball as we were rowing up to the vessel we were to attack. Amid a discharge of musketry, I was overpowered with fear. My knees shook and I was ready to faint away. Lieutenant Ball, seeing me, placed himself close beside me, took hold of my hand, and whispered, "Courage, my dear boy. You will recover in a minute or so." I was just the same when I first went out this way. It was as if an angel spoke to me. From that moment, I was as fearless and as forward as the oldest of the boat's crew. But I dare not think what would have become of me if, at that moment, he had scoffed and exposed me. And I just think that's a brilliant microcosm of like perfect leadership. Because today, because a lot of us are just broken, we either when somebody expresses to us, fear or insecurity like that, we either coddle them and like, validate their fear, or we abuse them, right, and make them feel worse for having those feelings. There's not this sort of acknowledging reinforcement that allows us to, that allows people to like get the confidence to face the fear, and then gain the competence from that.
right, like it's not how you die. That's not what you should fear. You shouldn't fear how you die. You should fear how you live.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's like living in fear is worse than facing the fear and not living anymore.
100%.
Right.
Yep.
So it's like, and yeah, we need to have that is something that's missing. It's like there's not a lot of encouragers anymore. Especially, and the messed up thing is that like people usually are looking for encouragement from people with experience
Right.
that have
So,
been through similar things, and those people have kind of gotten forgotten where they come from and forgotten their own fears because they've faced them so many times and forgot how they felt at the cannon's mouth, let's say. Right. So yeah, people need to be more conscious of that, especially if you're someone that other people look to, and at some point you were afraid of something. Now, whether you maybe you overcame it, and now people look up to you and look to you for advice. So when they're at that same situation, you have to be an encourager and remember that like I was in that same exact spot. I know what he's going through. I felt those same things before, but I got to remind this person that that can affect your reasoning, and that that's not unnatural to feel either. Like you don't become numb to fear until you face it enough times,
yeah.
right? Like even if
And
you face it, go ahead.
he has this whole it's about a paragraph below, after the one we were reading just before this, and he again lists all these beautiful vivid examples on what we were just talking about. How fear dies when you act on it. The sailor loses fear as fast as he acquires command of sails and spars and steam. The frontiersman when he has a perfect rifle and has acquired a sure aim. To the sailor's experience, every new circumstance suggests what he must do. The terrific chances which make the hours and the minutes long to the passenger, he whiles away by incessant application of expedients and repairs. To him, a leak, a hurricane, or a waterspout is so much work, no more. The hunter is not alarmed by bears, catamounts, or wolves, nor the grazier by his bull, nor the dog breeder by his bloodhound, nor an Arab by the simoon, nor a farmer by a fire in the woods. The forest on fire looks discouraging enough to a citizen. The farmer is skillful to fight it. The neighbors run together. With pine bows, they can mop out the flame, and by raking with the hoe a long but little trench, can find a patch the fire which would easily spread over 100 acres.
And this is one of my favorite parts. I had this underlined as well, where it's like people with the right knowledge and the right use of the knowledge get into a situation and it would rattle most people, but for them, it's just another day,
Yes. And I
right?
think
And
that's so important to have.
it's really important to getting to that level with whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's doing sales calls, trying to talk to girls, training MMA. It's really get to that point where it's like you face that fear and overcome it so many times that it's like it's not anything to you. It's just another day. It's another walk in the park. Even before this, he says, "Use makes a better soldier than the most urgent considerations of duty."
Boom.
Familiarity with danger enabling him to estimate the danger. He sees how much is the risk and is not afflicted with imagination. Right? So when we're saying fear is ignorance surrendered to the imagination. When you have the knowledge, you have a proper estimate. So you don't have use your imagination to come up with all these inaccurate scenarios of what can happen to you.
Yeah, it's
Right?
calibration.
This is actually like one of the reasons why the US is the best military in the world is because we're the only country that stays at war. So like he says use makes a better soldier than the most urgent considerations of duty. So all these soldiers in other countries can read as many military manuals as they want. They can read the art of war until they're blue in the face. And the fact of the matter is, if there was a combat right now, like the U.S. has thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers who have already been at war and experienced it. So they're going to stay more. They're going to be better acclimated to dealing with it. And that's actually one of the secrets of the U.S. Army is if we stay in constant conflict, then our soldiers are always going to be better because they're not just reading and doing theory; they're actually fighting.
Same with Russians too, seemingly.
Yeah, well, it seems like they caught on. We're like, hey, we need to get some of those XP points too.
Just gotta get some XP.
Yeah, some XP.
Meanwhile, China's out here just grinding units, just stacking units. We don't know how. Well, I'm obviously like, yeah, like it's war, it's awful and sucks. But like on just like a purely like analytical military historian kind of just part of me, I really want to see how the Chinese army performs because we've never seen it. We've never seen the modern Chinese army like do some grand military action. So I just want to see like in terms of history what that would look like. But
well, maybe we'll see in Taiwan or something.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see.
But
and he says,
in short, courage consists in equality to the problem before us.
Yep. Yeah, like it stacks up. Like you're saying,
to be ready for the challenge. Courage is equality to the problem in affairs and science and trade and counsel or in action. It consists in the conviction that the agents with whom you contend are not superior in strength of resources or spirit to you.
Yes, right there.
He makes this point a few times. He says, those who can conquer are those who believe they can.
Yes.
Right?
Well, it's all about self-belief. And I mean, you hear that so many times about like MMA fighters, right? Like, oh, like you're scared of getting hit? He's just as scared about him hitting you. And that gives you your power back.
Right. Yeah, you have to have the inborn belief that whatever you're up against is not superior in strength or resource or spirit to you. And you have to have the what we talked about earlier is knowing that like nature doesn't protect anything that doesn't defend itself. No one comes to aid anyone that doesn't exhaust and self-sacrifice. Right? So you got to also know that if you do those things, then the challenge you face is not going to be too big for you.
Yes. Moving forward, he goes down.
This is great. Here, let me read this.
Yeah.
So he goes, it is observed that men.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were both like on this line, like, yes, we must.
Yeah, this is great. This whole page is great. But he says, it is observed that men with little imagination are less fearful. It goes back to what we were saying about fear. A lot of it is just you imagining the worst possible outcomes. So it is observed that men with little imagination are less fearful. They wait till they feel pain, whilst others of more sensibility anticipate it and suffer in the fear of the pain more acutely than in the pain itself. It is certain that the threat is sometimes more formidable than the stroke, and it is possible that the beholders suffer more keenly than the victims. Bodily pain is superficial, seated usually in the skin and the extremities, for the sake of giving us warning to put it on our guard. The pain is not in the vitals, where the rupture that produces death is perhaps not felt, and the victim never knew it hurt him. Pain is superficial, and therefore fear is. So this is great. I want to break this down. And in the beginning it says, observe that men with little imagination are less fearful. They wait till they feel pain, whilst others of more sensibility. I think this is kind of a diss. Like he's like saying his tongue in cheek of more sensibility, like soy. So like anticipate it and suffer in the fear of the pain more than in the actual pain itself. And that's actually how things go. It's the fear of the pain that hurts more than the actual pain itself. Because when you're in a situation, you're just in it. There's no way to get out of it except to deal with it. So you're not thinking about how bad it is.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And he's like, it's certain that the threat is sometimes more formidable than the stroke. So it's like the fear usually is like more painful than the consequence.
Well, yeah. What's gonna hurt more? Like when you go into, like I keep going back to the MMA example, but it's such a good like visceral one, right? When you go in there and you keep thinking, I'm gonna get punched. Oh, it's gonna hurt really bad. Oh, I don't want to get punched in the face. I don't want to get punched in the face. Okay, you're in a fight, dude. Like you're gonna get punched in the face, and you do get punched in the face. You're gonna feel that. You're gonna react horribly. But
Right. Like I've seen people in corners where it's like their eyes cut and they're asking their coach like, how bad is it? And they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not hurt.
yeah,
Right. Because if you start thinking about it, you're thinking about it. Or there's that great clip with George St. Pierre where he comes back to the corner. He's like, coach, I think I tore my groin. He's like, I don't care. He's like, hit him with your groin.
yeah,
Right. It's like you can't surrender to be, oh, this is happening to me. Oh man, like this is bad. And that's where the panic starts. And you start imagining all these things that don't matter.
yeah,
He's like, you can't surrender to that fear. You have to walk everything off as if it's nothing, because the more you surrender to it, the worse the pain is actually going to be.
yep,
Right.
exactly.
And he even says that like the beholders suffer more keenly than the victims. How often, we can go back to MMA, how often do you see someone like get busted up and you're like, man, I couldn't go through that? Like it's actually worse for you because you're imagining all these bad things happening to you in your mind than the person that's actually happening to, because the person that's happening to is only worried about the moment.
Right. Yeah, and too, like yeah, the other thing,
Like
specifically with MMA,
you're living in a timeless state where like someone
right.
else is just living in that exact in the present.
Right. In that specific state too, like the adrenaline is pumped so much, and you're so goal oriented at that moment. Like when you're sitting on the couch with the beer, and you see the dude get elbowed or cut, you're thinking, "Ugh," and you're feeling that pain on you right now in your like lazy state. But that dude in the cage with that goal in mind, like yeah, it hurts. Obviously, it's mixed martial arts, but it's not this. He doesn't overcome with fear in that moment. Like it's just, oh, I got hit. I got to do this now.
And we have it because we have choice.
Yep.
We have a choice to keep things easy the way they are, or then go to the hard. We have a choice to make things difficult and go through the hard things. And it's like the person that is in the hard things, they don't have choice anymore. Like they're just in it and they have to deal with it, right? Until it's easier. Like that's it. So it's like because we have choice of easy or hard, the hard looks more difficult than it actually is.
And because life was historically very hard, and it progressively got easier as civilization advanced, and that bleeds into this next line that he says. It is plain that there is no separate essence called courage, no cup or cell in the brain, no vessel in the heart containing drops or atoms that make or give this virtue. But it is the right or healthy state of every man when he is free to do that which is constitutional to him to do. It is directness, the instant performing of which he ought. And that's like that, like we're talking about. That's the natural state.
Right.
Like when you're out being a hunter gatherer, when you're out, doing your, your campaigns or stuff to secure territory and stuff, you're not thinking about fear or whatever. You're not thinking about, oh, it'll hurt when no, you're thinking like, okay, I need to get this plot of land or else my entire family starves. Like
Right.
that's
You're
it.
in a healthy state, you're only thinking of doing what you have to do.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, I got my arm cut off. I get my arm cut off, but my family can eat, so it's totally worth it. Let's go.
Right. Like you're not just gonna lay there and be like, all right, I'm just gonna die now. Like you're not
Yeah.
gonna give up. There's no giving up in these situations.
No.
And even I want to go back for a second and just talk about
Yeah.
it. Because bodily pain is superficial, right? It's
Yes.
seated in the skin and the extremities. And it's for the sake of warning you that something bad could happen in your vitals if this gets deeper. Right? The pain that kills you comes from the inside, not the outside. Like you don't feel like your organs burst or anything like that or get ruptured. You feel your skin get punctured, and that's to warn you that there's vital things inside that can get hurt. So it's like the things that actually kill you and get you, you don't even feel. And that's
Yeah.
why it says pain is superficial and therefore fear is. Like you wouldn't want to. I remember when I was a little kid, I was like, man, what would it be like to be like invincible, right? Like you feel no pain. And I started looking into it, and I learned that there's actually people that like their nerve endings are messed up or something, and they can't feel pain. It's actually horrible because they don't know when they're hurt.
Yeah.
So like they could break their ankle and just be walking around on it, or like they could be burnt and wouldn't know something's hot, right?
Yep.
So like pain is actually there, just a warning for the internals, and because that's superficial, the thing that kills you is internally, and things that makes you afraid is internal as well. It's not the superficial things.
I would, yeah, yeah. I would love to experience that for one day, just one day.
What, no pain?
Yeah, I just love to experience what that would feel like because I assume there would be like the immediate benefits, right? Oh my god, I'll just kill everyone sparring and like I'll just like, I can fight whoever I want, and then you realize like oh I stepped on a nail and I feel absolutely nothing and I'm bleeding everywhere, right? And you don't even notice it.
Right. And I mean, I wonder if you can even feel pleasure. Like, can you feel the
Exactly.
softness of silk? Can you, does it feel good to pet an animal? Like so you kind of you need pain. You need the bad sense of touch for the good sense of the touch to also feel good as well. It's just like
True.
you can't have you can't have anything without the opposite. You can't have light without dark. You can't have cold without hot. Like it's the same
Yep.
thing, right? So you need it. It's functional.
Our yes, our bodies are designed
It says,
a certain way.
undoubtedly, there is a temperamental courage, a warlike blood which loves a fight. The like vein appears in certain races of men and in individuals of every race. In every school, there are certain fighting boys. In every society, the contradicting men. In every town, bravos and bullies. Better or worse dressed, fancy men, patrons of the cockpit and ring. Courage is temperamental, scientific, ideal. So he says that there's actually something to inborn courage. Like there's fighting type people. This is when we talk about like physiognomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like some fighters just look like fighters. Like there's certain races that were warlike with warlike blood and love to fight. Like I think back to the Japanese before we nuked them, right? Like samurai culture, warlike blood. Same saw the same thing in the Mongols, right? And in each race, there's also men in every race that are certain fighting men, and that's very true. That's pretty funny that he knows about this stuff, because like people literally talk about physiognomy and all these things every day, and like this guy is basically hinting at the same thing. And that there's a natural predisposition. So courage isn't just temperamental, there's also a scientific aspect to it as well. There's a genetic aspect. And like it's not saying that everybody, and he even actually goes on to clarify later that there's different types of courage. He says each has its own courage as his own talent. But the courage of the tiger is one, and of the horse another. The dog that scorns to fight will fight for his master. The llama that will carry your load if you caress him will refuse food and die if he is scourged. The fury of onset is one, and of calm endurance another. There is courage of the cabinet, as well as courage of the field. A courage of manners in private assemblies, and another in public assemblies. A courage which enables one man to speak masterly to a hostile company, whilst another man can easily face a cannon's mouth, dares not to open his own. So what he's saying is courage can manifest itself in different ways. Like what's courageous for one person isn't necessarily courageous for another person. Now I think there are certain things that we all agree that we should be courageous about, like your principles, right? Like,
Right.
but how that's gonna play out is gonna be different.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and that's yeah. It was temperament, right? Some people are very type A. They're very, and it comes down to like their skills too. Some people are much better at demonstrating with actions. Some people are brilliant wordsmiths. Some people are fantastic writers. Like Emerson, for example, right? His writings are a massive act of courage, especially with all the resistance he pushes up against the spirit of the times. He's committed. Every writer, Thomas Paine in the Revolution, Jefferson, Adams, all these guys, like through their writings, were displaying courage and whatnot, even if they weren't shooting the bullets at the British soldiers.
I like this line where he says, "It gives." When he's saying it, he means courage gives the cutting edge to every profession.
Yes, it gives the cutting edge to every profession.
So
Love
people
it.
who are constantly pushing bounds in like business, art, things like this, like they're courageous. Like Steve Jobs was courageous when he made the iPhone.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Yeah, you find your edge and you push it. touch it.
You know, like Elon Musk is courageous when he's trying to make rockets.
Yeah.
Right. It's the cutting edge of the profession now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's courage there as well.
It's funny too. We underline or we highlight the exact same things.
In all applications, it is the same power. The habit of reference to one's own mind as the home of truth and counsel. He just talked about this. Like courage in all applications is the same thing. It's just believing that what you believe is right, and that if you follow that path and follow what you believe in, there's nothing that can stand against you.
Yeah, it'll work out.
You know, that reminds me of the, what line is it?
But I remember the old professor, this one.
Well, he's just saying courage is equality to the problem. Those who conquer believe they can.
And this is here. While you're finding that, I'll say this line right here. This is kind of like a restatement of what we've gone through. Every creature has the courage of his constitution fit for his duties. Archimedes, the courage of a geometer to stick to his diagram, heedless of the siege and sack of the city. And the Roman soldier has faculties to strike at Archimedes. Each is strong, or relying on his own, and each is betrayed when he seeks in himself the courage of others.
That's pretty interesting.
And I mean, I think you could swap out courage with another word like gift, right? The gift of others, right? If you, I think we were talking about this in self-reliance too, right? If you try, if you see Shakespeare and you're inspired by Shakespeare, and you go, you know what? I really like, MMA, or I really like public speaking, but I'm going to go be a playwright because I need to be like Shakespeare. That's screwing yourself.
Right. You could study Shakespeare and teach it till you're blue in the face and not create another one.
Exactly. But you get inspired by that to figure out where you can be courageous in your own life that's fit for your constitution. It's all about your own constitution. He constantly refers back to this your own constitution.
It's self-reliance. It's all over you. Right? Yeah. Each is strong, relying on his own, and each is betrayed when he seeks in himself the courage of others. Like, you can be inspired by the acts of others.
Yes.
But you have to look at your own life and figure out where you need to take stance.
You know
where you can be strong.
It's really funny too that it's really funny how all his books like link together. Like all these themes keep popping up in the same writings. It's pretty beautiful. But
oh, I love this part.
The last note on this is that the John Brown part.
Oh no, it's after that.
Oh, okay. Just he keeps using the word constitution, right? And that keeps. I know he's using it in a different context, but that keeps reminding me of like somebody told me like 3 years ago that I should write down all my principles on a piece of paper. I should really think. Maybe it might have been.
I've told people this, like it's like you should take all the traits that you want to exemplify as a man and write them down.
Yes.
And then you should define them to yourself. And then you should write down what would it look like if you behaved that way.
Right.
Right. Then be like, and then you write down like what would the result of that be? Like how would that change my life?
Right.
How would I treat people? How would that affect my business? How would that affect my relationships? How would that affect my health?
Yep.
Right. So you should write down all your principles, define them. Write down what it looks like to exemplify those traits on an everyday basis, and write down how your life will be impacted by it. You write down how your life would be worse if you didn't do these things.
Yep. Yeah. Take that in the reality. Write your own constitution.
Right. Yeah.
Not just the countries.
You should actually have your own constitution and your own rules and your own principles. Right. And I think a lot of us do. Right. But it's not clearly defined.
Yep.
And I think like a lot of the way the world is now is because like previous generations weren't solid on their principles and their constitution. They didn't pass it down. Like in a sense, tradition is a constitution. Right? So It's like if you have to have solid things that you stand on and that you believe in and be able to have them be really clear cut. And I feel like the previous generations kind of lost that, and that's why it didn't get passed down to us.
Right.
So you have to be really clear on the type of person that you want to be.
Very true.
If you want to actually be your idealized self. I love this part where it says, "True courage is not ostentatious. Men who wish to inspire terror seem thereby to confess themselves cowards. Why do they rely on it? But because they know how potent it is with themselves." So people who rely on like threats or like fear to get people to do what they want, they only do that because that's what works on them. Like, I don't try to intimidate people because I can't be intimidated. It doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
on me, right? Like, people who try to intimidate you, it's because being intimidation works as a tactic on them. People that try to scare you is because they're afraid of people scaring them and threatening them. It's like the people who are always going to do something to you don't threaten to do something to you. They just do it.
Yeah, and right above that, he has an anecdote for this. He says, "As soon as I hear one of my men say, 'Ah, let me only get my eye on such a man, I'll bring him down,' I don't expect much aid in the fight from that talker. 'Tis the quiet, peaceable man, the man of principle, that makes the best soldiers." And my comment next to it, I just put flexing, because that reminds me so much of like modern hustle flex culture, right? You have like, oh, I make millions of dollars, I have this, I have this, I have this, oh, I'm the best, blah, blah, blah. And it's the dude with like the private account with like the default profile that's like, that's the one with all the billions that's just there to lurk, right?
I've literally met people like this from Twitter
Yeah.
that have like a little ghost account just to keep up with people, and then like I've talked to them, they told me who they are, they prove who they are, and it's like, wow, these people are actually doing it bigger than everybody else that claims to do it so big. And
Exactly.
I even see it in my own life. Like, the most successful people I know are like the least braggadocious.
Yeah. I mean, so many of my friends meet ridiculously connected people just like
Now,
at a sauna
it
somewhere.
doesn't mean that aren't successful people like that, but in general, it's not flashy.
No, no, it's not. Yeah, it's like a Pareto principle, right?
Like, or like, I hate to use this guy as an example, but look at someone like Joe Rogan. He seems like they call him Bro Rogan. Like, he seems like everybody's little friend, but that he's loaded, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't really know it, right? Unless you look into the numbers. Like, dude's probably halfway to $1 billion,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or like, who do people love now? Hermosi or something.
Yeah. Hormozy.
He seems like everybody's boy, but dude's crushing it.
Yep. Yep.
So you have to watch out for that with people's characteristics. Like, they're trying to scare you because they're cowards themselves. If they're trying to flex having more money than you, it's because they're worried about not having money themselves. A lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time.
I think I know which next section you highlighted.
Let's see. Well, this is this part about John Brown and that I have it highlighted, but I wasn't gonna read it. But I'll read it.
I wrote some context for John Brown too on the side. I gave a little like give a little thing on the side of I could read that out just for some historical
Yeah,
context so we
so
kind of got going.
I'll read this, but the main reason I highlighted it is because it was funny to me that,
Yeah.
which we talked about before we started recording, is how he's able to reference all these great historical figures, and like, I I haven't read enough history, apparently, like, after reading, which I realized recently, is I just haven't read nearly enough history. But it's funny that he has all these references to draw upon, and it's like the normal references I make in my mind are to like something I saw in a movie or television show or some sort of like celebrity or like podcaster. It's like it just shows you the state of like Western society, where it's like people used to have like all these myths and tales and histories passed down to them, and they weren't just passed down for solely for entertainment or for programming them. It was for like educating them,
Yes.
teaching them lessons of life. Where it's like all our references, like most people's average person reference comes from like a Marvel movie or something, and it's like these things are not actually made to teach you anything. They're made to
Affirm modern
right.
political narratives and stuff
They're
like
they're
that.
they're made to program you and to entertain you,
Yep.
right? And it's like we have completely lost like all the stories that help build this civilization. and all the tales. Like they're just not distributed anymore. And we've traded them in for like these well, you could say some of these myths are artificial, but like all myths are true and false at the same time
Yep.
because it's not necessarily about being a historical fact, it's about being a fact of humanity
Yep.
and speaking to something about the human condition and the human experience and like the way our mind works, the way the world works, the way God and the world and like the universe and the forces and how God works and like that the truth and like a lot of the things like the Bible or the Quran or whatever religious book you want to believe in is like the metaphor. They metaphorically make more sense than they do factually.
Right. Yeah, it's the different levels of abstraction, right? You can read the Bible as a literal text, or you can read it as a metaphor. You can read it as revelatory to today, like lots of different angles.
And so we've destroyed our stories. And what he said that made me think of this, he said the true temper has genial influences. It makes a bond of union between enemies. Governor Wise of Virginia, in the record of his first interviews with the prisoner, appeared to grant advantage. If Governor Wise is a superior man, or inasmuch as he is a superior man, he distinguishes John Brown. As they confer, they understand each other swiftly. Each respects the other. If opportunity allowed, they would prefer each other's society and desert their former companions. Enemies would become affectionate. Hector and Achilles, Richard and Saladin, Wellington and Soult, General Damas and Abdel Kader became aware that they are nearer and more alike than any other two, and, if their nation and circumstance did not keep them apart, would run into each other's arms. So this is great. I made that reference because it reminded me of like one of my favorite shows, which is Spartacus, and it reminded me of Spartacus and Crixus. And like in one of the last episodes, they were rivals the whole time, and the two best. And like in one of the last episodes of the first season, they say to each other like, "Hey, in another life, we would have been like brothers." And that's how it works. People who are great men, even when they oppose each other, they're very similar
Yep.
and they respect each other. Like this is why you'll see like a lot of fight. We'll go back to MMA references. Like you'll see a lot of fighters talking shit to each other before a fight, but after they go through a 5 round battle with each other, they're like hugging and saying all these great and nice things for each other because
Yeah.
you recognize that someone is on your level or has the same greatness for you. You can't really disrespect them. It's impossible to hate them.
I remember. I remember the second Colby Usman fight.
Right?
They go
Yeah.
to that 5 round war, and then Colby walks up to him, and you think, oh, he's gonna say some like more Colby shit, just be annoying. And you see him on the mic, it's like, I respect you, bro. It's just trying to sell and make the money. I respect, and they're like hugging and talking and all chill. It's like,
Because I
yeah,
mean,
it's that competitor respect.
right. Like this is why I say like sports actually defeat a lot of discrimination
Yeah,
because you have to respect other people as competitors. Like it
yeah,
doesn't matter what they look like or where they're from. Like if someone can compete against you, you have to respect them.
yeah. If you guys are playing the same thing and you get beat, you get beat,
Like we're
and
we're doing the same competition under the same unified rules. And if this man beats me, he's just better than me, and I have to respect that. You can't
yep.
disrespect somebody after competing with them heavy.
And my note on the side with this is that this I think this is the first time in human history where like because we have the internet, we allow this connection for the first time because we can have great men from different countries who in ages past would have been at war or have like huge political rallies against each other, whatever. Like they could break through the noise, and you can link up with a Russian and a Ukrainian and a Chinese person and like all these great guys, and you could share knowledge, you can network, you can break through like the national boundaries basically, and like I don't think we've seen the beginning of like how powerful this can become. Where great men all across the world can network together against the wishes of governments or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anywhere near the peak of it, and I don't think even people are thinking big enough yet. Even people that are already connected and thinking about what they do, it's like the problem with our world is everybody tries to do everything alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and now you're connected to all these great people that are on the same path as you, have the same views as you. It's like you have a responsibility to work together. That's how elite. How do you think the elites work? Do you think they work alone? No, they move in unison. They all work together. Like that's their power. It's like the whole like ape together strong thing. See how they all our references are like from like bullshit propaganda that they've just been feeding us forever because they didn't teach us these things, and we have to go out and explore and find them for ourselves. But it's like you should be. I tweeted this a long time ago, and I even shared it in my Telegram recently. It's like if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. But if you want to go as far as you can, as fast as you can, go with savages. So you need to be finding the people that align with you and have a similar vision to you, and you need to be linking up and working together. That's where the strength is. It's not the strength is in unity.
There we go.
Right? Like, and that's the funny thing. It's like everything's inverted. They tell you strength is in solidarity. It's not. It's in unity. It's like the complete opposite always.
Yeah, they want to add it. Well, I think
they're showing solidarity, and it's like no, it's like the unity is what actually gives you strength.
Yep, definitely. Well, it goes against a lot of like the current the narratives to try to atomize everybody too. Like that's exactly it's at the end of the day. Like that's what the British did in India, right? They got a bunch of tribes to fight each other, and it just took one guy to be like, "Hey, why don't we stop fighting each other and fight the guy that's making us fight each other?" And everyone's like, "Oh, okay." And then the British get kicked out.
Right. And so like, yeah, I mean, yeah, people got to start working together and coming together, and you're going to get a lot further, and you're going to get there a lot faster.
And I always like the British or the Indian example too, because like now the Indians like their banking system and stuff is disconnected from the Western world. Like they're a very like they're a rapidly growing country, and all that was because in the 20th century there was a couple guys that were like, why don't we stop getting divided and conquered so easily? And we'll see how that goes here in America, but it's interesting times.
All right, let's keep going. So, I like this part. It says, "See to what good contagion belongs to it." So he's talking about courage. See what good contagion belongs to courage. Everywhere it finds its own with magnetic affinity. Courage of the soldier awakes the courage of woman. Florence Nightingale brings Lent in the blessing of her shadow. Heroic women offer themselves as nurses of the brave veteran. So, if you want better women, you need stronger men.
Yep.
This is basically what I got from that. It's like when the weak men created all the problems that we have in today's world. Yes. You can get mad at women as much as you want, but like, I mean, and females can be listening to this. Like, I don't even think women have agency. I don't care. But like, it's all just depending on how men behave. That determines everything. That determines the behavior of women. So,
well, I mean, you notice,
women are disgusted by weakness, so it's no surprise that they hate that.
Yes, it's the mind is very reactionary, right? It's very
like they're mad. They're mad you let them have all these freedoms. now they're stressed out.
Yeah.
Now they need to figure out what they're going to do with their life for work, and where they're going to live, and how they're going to pay their bills, and how they're going to balance that with trying to continue on genetically. Like,
everyone
stressed and they're pissed off, and they just don't know.
Yeah, this is obviously your area of expertise, but like everybody knows that when you give a woman everything she wants and you appease her, right, then she comes to resent you. And so when you sacrifice what you want for what she wants, she comes to resent you, and then she leaves because you're weak and you don't have your own frame. You don't have your own, you're not doing your own things. Your life is totally in relation to her. And when you like you said with it, the courage of the soldier awakens the courage of the woman. When the man is masculine, the woman is feminine.
Exactly.
The poles align, right?
Yeah, it's like women don't. They may scream that they want all these things. They don't. Like, girls don't even like making simple decisions like where we're gonna go eat. They hate it.
Yeah.
Like, they just want you to be like, hey, we're gonna go here. Oh, okay, thanks. They want to support.
Yeah.
I want to decide. They want to know that the person steering the ship is confident in the direction they're going in, and they'll support that.
Yeah, they want like a bullet train that's plowing through like vast frontiers, and she wants to be inside, like in the cabin, getting served the champagne and stuff.
The charm of the best courages is that they are inventions, inspirations, flashes of genius. The hero could not have done the feat at another hour in a lower mood.
Same with science too. That's the first thing that came to my mind.
It reminds me of timing,
Yeah,
right? Like the timing has to be right for you to be a hero. Like if I don't walk past a burning building, I can't save anybody from it.
right,
So
right.
like you have to also look at your life and look for the timing and like look for the opportunities you see to like just
Yeah,
do the right thing.
yeah, and
You know,
teach patience.
like an example I have. I mean, it's not courageous or heroic, but like I saw some old lady at a grocery store like with hella stuff and like she could barely walk. And, like had this whole cart full of stuff, like and was like struggling to push it out. So I ran to my car, put my stuff away, went back and helped her. It's like we see so many opportunities to put good in the world and do the right things, and we just walk over them.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
think about
not
that
what a
too.
that's not what a heroic person or a courageous person is like. Like they take the opportunities they can to help people. They spot them and they don't gloss over them. Like I'm sure
Yeah,
people see opportunities to do good and put good and help people in the world all the time and literally just ignore them. And that's part of like the dystopian society that I'm talking about, where they want you to feel alone and go through everything alone. So that it trains you to a point where it's like they want you to see other people as your enemy, right? And it's like
and and
people
I
who are against you, and you have to deprogram yourself and start looking at it differently and start looking at ways you can help people.
right.
But
Yeah,
don't
no.
help people that are wearing masks still.
Just pitying
Ignore them.
everyone.
If they,
Just
that's
just
my thing now. That's my like new thing now. It's like if you're wearing a mask and everything around me, like it's giving me a good indication of how far we are apart. Like and like literally some of these people do wish ill on you. So
yeah,
like
like I can't.
keep that in mind.
There's nothing I can do to help you at that
Right.
point.
Like I can't
There's
help you. But
nothing
like
I
when
can
I
do.
see people that are like not going with it, like okay, like I'm nice to those people, and like
Yeah,
if I have the
there's
opportunity
an
to do something
angle.
good for them, I'll do something for them because I know that we're closer. Some people are reachable, some aren't. Right? Like a fool thinks that they can reach everybody. Can't reach everybody. Like that's just not how life works. That's not how the world works. Like there has to be.
No, even Jesus said, like don't cast your pearls before swine. Like don't give the gifts of God to people who are just gonna like gnash it with their teeth and be locusts and just distort it and hunt you down, right? For saying that. People who will feel so affronted that you try to share God with them that they'll hunt you down.
Right? Like there has to be good and evil, right? For
Yes.
goodness to really, really matter. So some things are necessary. But yeah, so the hero could not have done the feat at another hour in a lower mood. So sometimes it's the timing, like sometimes it's positioning,
Yep.
right? Like you got to put yourself in position to succeed a lot of time. Like say for instance, like you were like, hey, things aren't kicking off where I am. Like I'm gonna go where things are kicking off. Like that's positioning. Like that's you turn yourself into a hero by putting yourself in a spot where heroic things can happen, right?
Definitely. And I mean, we see right here, it says the statue, the architecture were the later and inferior creation of the same genius. In view of this moment of history, we recognize a certain prophetic instinct better than wisdom. Napoleon said, well, my hand is immediately connected with my head, but the sacred courage is connected with the heart. The head is a half, a fraction, until it is enlarged and inspired by the moral sentiment. For it is not the means on which we draw, as health or wealth, practical skill, or dexterous talent, or multitudes of followers that count, but the aims only. The aims reacts back to the means.
No, don't forget the next line. That's the most important one.
A great aim aggrandizes the means.
Yes. So a great aim aggrandizes the means. So a great goal increases the means you have to accomplish it. This is like he's saying the same thing over and over again. This is just like he's talking about when he talked about how when the crowd sees someone that's self-sacrificing and that's against all odds, that's when they'll conspire to see fair play.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when the crowd sees someone with great aim, it aggrandizes the means of that person to be successful because now they want the things to be even. He's saying the same exact thing here. He's like, it's not the means on which you draw. It's not about the health or wealth that you have or the practice skill or the talent or the multitudes of followers. It's like the aims only. The aims rebacked on the mean. If you're doing it for the right reasons, people see it, God sees it, universe see it, and then things start to conspire for your aim to be accomplished.
Yeah, it's like, what's more aggrandizing? I want to make a bunch of money, or like I want to free the world from all tyranny. You know, one of those is a lot easier for people to get behind and understand the innate greatness of it.
Right. So like when your aim is that's all he's saying is when your aim is correct, your power will increase.
Yeah. And honestly, too, everything else will fall in place. You'll learn.
There is a persuasion in the soul of man that he is here for cause, that he was put down on this place by Creator to do the work for which it inspires him, that thus he is an overmatch for all antagonists that can combine against him. So he's saying the same thing again. It's like, you really just got to believe that, like, yo, I got the sauce, I can't be stopped. Like, I'm bigger than any obstacle or challenge that I'm going to face no matter what. Like, you have to have the belief that God put you here for a reason and that whatever you're up against is just not a match for you. He said, you're an overmatch for all antagonists that can combine against you. Like, you have to have that fundamental belief in yourself. And you build that belief through discipline, I believe. Because it's one thing to just pretend like you have that in you and that you're greater than all the things that you do. But no, you have to have the actions backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I can't simply believe I'm a good fighter. Like, I have to train like I'm a good fighter. I can't simply believe that I'm going to be a millionaire. I have to work like I'm going to be a millionaire.
Yep.
Right?
You have to embody the traits.
You have to embody. You can't just have the belief without the action.
Yes.
You need both. And when you have both, that's when you're allowed to start seeing yourself as an overmatch for all antagonists that can combine against you. That's when you're allowed to do that. Can't do it without the work. Sacred courage indicates that a man loves an idea better than all things in the world, that he is aiming neither at pelf nor comfort, but will venture all to put in act the invisible thought in his mind. He is everywhere a liberator, but of a freedom that is ideal, not seeking to have land or money or conveniences, but to have no other limitation than that which his own constitution imposes. He is free to speak truth. He is not free to lie. He wishes to break every yoke all over the world which hinders his brother from acting after his thought. So here he's just talking about how like sacred courage is following your own constitution no matter what, loving what you believe in more than all else.
Everywhere a liberator. Yes. I love that. And I love the line, 2 lines above, where he says, "There is much of a fable, but the broad base is a fact. The tender skin does not shrink from bayonets. The timid woman is not scared by faggots. The rack is not frightful, nor the rope ignominious." I know that means bundle of sticks, but I don't get the context.
I don't know. It's just funny to say faggots.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to read it. There's not often you get an opportunity to just say that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's like bundle of sticks. Maybe it's like work, right? Like the tender skin does not shrink from bayonets. The timid woman is not scared. But like maybe it's like doing work or something. I don't know. Timid. I don't know. Whatever. I have to reread this like another 4 times.
Yeah, I didn't have that part underlined, but I do remember reading it, and I remember like because he spells it with like 1 T,
one G,
or is it 1 G? Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I added like the other G in mine.
Let me see what that even. Yeah. Okay. So it is a bundle. Okay. So it's bundle of twigs or bundle pieces of iron or steel to be welded and hammered into bars. So it's probably something like, you know.
He ends up talking about women in labor at some other point in here. He might be referring to that.
Interesting.
I can't remember where it is, but
in any case, I underlined that just because it was slightly funny. But we can move on.
There are degrees of courage, and each step upward makes us acquainted with a higher virtue. Let us say then frankly that the education of the will is the object of our existence. Wow. Poverty, the prison, the rack, the fire, the hatred and execrations of our fellow men appear trials beyond the endurance of common humanity. But to the hero whose intellect is aggrandized by the soul, and so measures these penalties against the good which his thoughts pervades, these terrors vanish as darkness at sunrise. So each step we take up in courage, we become acquainted with higher virtue.
Mm-hmm.
The education of the will is the object of our existence. That's what it's like. Life is simply
The education of the will. Interesting.
yeah. Like, can you make yourself do the things you want to do and stop yourself from doing the things you don't want to do? That's it. That's all
It's
it is.
so simple, but it's the most difficult thing we'll ever do.
It's a game of choices. It's a game of will. A game of discipline.
And because we're fallen people, we're always gonna have that urge. We're always gonna have that urge.
And it's just like the more you exercise his will in the right way, the more power, the more willpower you have.
Yep.
That's just how it works. Like the more you give into things, the more you'll give into. It's just that simple. Oh, this is actually good. This part right here. He says, "We have little right in piping times of peace to pronounce on these rare heights of character, but there is no assurance of security. In the most private life, difficult duty is never far off. Therefore, we must think with courage." So he's basically saying, like, why is it important to talk about all these things? Like, even to us, like right now, having this conversation. Why does any of this matter? Like, you live in a comfort society, and like, you can get everything delivered to your door in 2 days or less, and there's food abundance everywhere that you go. And what he's saying is, like, we talk about these, we can't forget about these great acts of courage where people have literally sacrificed their lives and everything, because there's no security in the society.
No.
Everything can go wrong at any moment. Difficulty is never far off. So if you don't have these things in mind and you don't keep them center mind, then when it's time, you're going to tremble at the cannon's mouth.
Demons are always looking to break everything. Demons don't go away.
Right. It's like, so yeah, you can be like, oh, why would you even think about this? So this is kind of extreme to even think about these things. It's not relevant. No, it's always relevant to think this way. This is how you have to behave. Like, the problem not thinking this way is how things got the way they are.
Yep. And
right?
and
you have
and,
to take it seriously. There's no security in the
yeah,
society.
yeah. And thinking and keeping prepared this way is how we can keep things like same day delivery and food, plentiful food. That's how we can secure those things, is by keeping this in check and keeping this part of our iron sharpened. So it's the assurance. I mean, he says there's no assurance of security because obviously he's understanding, like, on a long human scale, we're falling, we'll keep falling into our own failings and stuff. But the reason why we need to remember this is because of that. The second we fall off is that somebody who has horrible intentions for us is going to take over. The second we let our guard down, somebody's going to come up and stab us right in the back. Just how things are.
Right, or you just be unprepared for bad things that could happen.
Yep.
Like, who knows? People, I tend to now think that when they warn you about something, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to, like, misdirect you. It's like misdirection.
I was thinking about that with I was thinking about that the other day with the
food shortage stuff.
Yes, yes. I was thinking, like, they
right.
pushed it super early, so people did it, realized nothing was going to happen, and then now, it looks like something is going to happen with the supply chains eventually. Like at the end of probably like later this year, it seems like, or early next year, mainly.
Like, it's not going to happen like right when they say it. They're not going to give you a warning like that. But it's fun now. I do believe I'm starting to believe the food shortage thing is coming. You know why? Because I'm like, right now I'm at a point where, like, I can see through the spells really well. Mm-hmm. And, like, almost immediately, like, I get a gut instinct or intuition of what's going to happen, and then, like, that turns out being right. So I remember, like, maybe like when the whole Russian thing kicked off, everybody was talking about, like, nukes, right? And I think, like, Rogue tweeted something about nukes, and I don't know if I actually sent this tweet. I think I might have, or if I just, like, saved it as a draft. I was like, there's not going to be any nukes. That's the misdirection. What's really going to happen is it's probably going to be some sort of food issue or energy crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I'm seeing all stuff about food shortage. I'm like, now I'm seeing like all the fertilizer prices and things like that. I'm like, maybe that is what's going to happen, because
Yeah.
my first initial instinct when they started talking about nukes is like, no, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be something else, because that's how they always get you. They don't just outright say what's going to happen. You got to think in a different. You just got to. You can't just accept anything at face value. You got to think,
Yeah.
like, what would they really happen? What would really mess us up? So I'm starting to believe now a little bit, but I don't know if it's the worst thing, right? Like, like fertilizer is bad anyways.
Yeah.
So
Well,
like,
and two, like, again,
factory farming is bad. Factory
yeah,
farming of vegetables and grains or animals, like, it's just bad in general.
we
So
don't know. Again, we don't know how bad this is. We don't know how, like, what form it's going to be in, too, right? Like, there's everything from, oh, there's going to be, like, little bit less oranges to, like, oh, there's going to be nothing on the shelves and you're going to die. It's probably a middle ground, right? There's probably going to be, like, price increases and some things gone. But, I mean, American ingenuity is unreal, dude. And we haven't seen it come back in a while. And I think times of crisis are the perfect times for ingenuity to strike. So I don't think, it's not just like, it's not like determinism, right? Where it's just like, oh, we're all screwed and we're all going to die. So just, whatever.
the most overarching statement I can make about it is, if you don't have money, you're probably fucked. And it's really not.
Yeah. That's why.
That's the most overarching statement I can make.
That's what I've been focused on.
So like, anybody's listening to this, like, you should be in an extreme money acquisition period.
Yes.
For like the next 10, 15. Like, it should be your number one focus.
Yes.
Make as much and keep as much as you possibly can, and invest as much as you possibly can in hard, tangible assets that aren't going to go away. Land, houses.
Buy land.
I could even say metals. I think metals are purposely suppressed and have been for a long time. You can invest in your crypto or whatever, I guess, but just, you should diversify, basically. At the end of the day, I've read that at the highest levels, everything always goes back to real estate. So, but yeah, you should be in an extreme money acquisition period, because whatever comes next, it's going to be a class thing mostly.
Yep.
Like, if you don't have money, like, people who have money weren't really affected by the pandemic as much. Like, traveling around the world, going wherever they want.
And I was just listening to a Zig Ziglar talk today, Zig Ziglar, and he was talking about how, like, when you look around, he's doing his southern voice, right? When you look around, you see that there's, during any times of economic crisis, there's people that keep living life normally. And, he's talking about how, like, the people, like, the most successful people, like, their lives aren't tied to the economy. He's like, well, like, when the economy is really bad, you see a lot of people, like, making tons of money. And when the economy is really good, you see a lot of people getting wiped out. Why is that? It's because a lot of people, like, tie themselves to the economy, whereas you can uncouple, if you have the right mind frame and, like, view of the world, you can uncouple yourself and know that work will always be valuable, skills will always be valuable, like, investing the right way, like, again, that takes courage. It takes courage to break away from the system and to look at things with your own will, instead of getting consumed by the greater economy, which is, like, almost not even real.
My favorite Zig Ziglar quote is, like, money's not the most important thing in life, but it's right up there with oxygen.
Yes, yeah, he just said that. He was in the talk.
All right, so let's see. We're almost at the end of this. So it says, he has not learned the lesson of life who does not every day surmount a fear. I do not wish to put myself or any man into a theatrical position, or urge him to ape the courage of his comrade. Have the courage not to adopt another's courage. There is scope and cause and resistance enough for us in our proper work and circumstance. So if you're not pushing and surmounting a fear every day, are you even alive? Like, seriously, you should be pushing for discomfort and do things that, it doesn't have to be like, there's different types of fears. Like, there's social fears, there's physical fears. I think that's actually most of them, right? Like, you fear something physically happening to you, or you fear something that could happen socially, like getting rejected or being embarrassed in, like, a sales call or something.
And maybe a third is like spiritual, I guess. Like, oh, am I going to go to hell? Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. We could add that one too.
Yeah. But
So
I mean, like as we said, a lot of these are like, you know, they can be, they can all be dealt with action.
right, you suffer more in thinking about them than you do in going through them.
And I love that first line. He has not learned the lesson of life who does not every day surmount a fear. And this could be something very small, right? This could just be like, I'm bad at, like, I don't like talking to people, but I need to make money. So let me do like 10 sales calls today, see if I can get any bites, right? And you do that, and it gets less scary next time, right? And it's very small. You're not conquering territory. You're not winning elections. You're not, you're not accomplishing greatness, but you killed a little bit of the fear inside you, which is going to make the greatness part much easier in the long run.
Right, or like people who fear exercise, like fear going for a run or fear going to the gym. No, it's real. Like people plan to work out in the morning and like go for a run, and they'll think about the pain of running when they're in bed, and they'll think about the comfort and warmthness of the bed, and they'll succumb to the fear of the discomfort.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Right,
know what? To me, just don't run.
like whatever.
If
Yeah,
you're trying to
whatever.
get in shape, just side tangent. If you're trying to get in shape, the last thing you should do is like put on shoes and go sloppily jog on concrete for like an hour. Like
I
that's
honestly,
awful.
I honestly don't care what people do. If you do nothing, do something. Like
Yeah,
that's the level I'm at with people. Like I don't need people to have like their programming exactly perfect to
yeah,
begin with, because there's levels of everything. At every furious amount, you become more accustomed to a higher level of virtue. It's the
yeah.
same thing with any sort of challenges, right? Like if you do absolutely nothing, I'd rather you just do something, and then that's going to build momentum. And then maybe in like a couple weeks from now, you start figuring out a more effective and functional way to do things that's going to get you the results that you want. But the first thing that you need to do is just start doing it. So it's like you have to every day, and this what he says, like the lesson of life is surmount the fear every day. So it's like whatever makes you uncomfortable is a fear,
Hmm.
right? Because humans are built to seek comfort, right? So it's like it doesn't always mean that fear doesn't always mean like you're terrified of something. It's like you don't want to deal with the discomfort of something, right? Like that's what's happening. When you don't want to deal with the discomfort, you're afraid of what you have to go through to do it. It doesn't seem like a terrible, like a terror, but it's the same thing,
Definitely.
right? So let's see. And yeah, you don't have to. He says you don't have to adopt the courage of another. Like
Yeah,
I'm pushing my own boundaries. Like there's scope and cause and resistance enough for us and your proper work. So there's things that you deal with every day that are an obstacle for you, and I deal with things every day that are an obstacle for me.
yeah.
And maybe like I've been in positions that somebody is listening to this has been in, and I surmounted it. It doesn't mean that I don't have things that I still have to conquer and still face on an everyday basis. I'm just onto a different thing.
Yeah, for you, like, if we go back to the to fighting terms, right? Like for you, submitting a guy is is a goal for you. For me, where I'm at, it's more about just like staying alive and keeping my position and stuff. And
Right. Yeah.
so,
Like I'm not worried about uh how I do against like a hobbyist. Like I'm worried about how I would do against somebody that's like professionally does it.
right. And
Right.
so that's, it's just it's different levels.
Right. Yeah.
But
Like
same soul, different levels, same spark, just different perspectives.
exactly. Like, and I've seen this. Like, you go into academy, and like a white belt has different problems to deal with than a black belt does.
Hmm.
Just how it goes.
Totally.
All right. If you accept this, my last, I'm going to highlight from this. If you accept your thoughts as inspirations from the supreme intelligence, obey them when they prescribe difficult duties, because they come only so long as they are used. Or if your skepticism reaches to the last verge and you have no confidence in any foreign mind, then be brave, because there is one good opinion which must always be of consequence to you, namely your own.
Bang.
So, how you think of yourself is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what you believe in, and the only way you're going to have a good image of yourself is by pushing yourself. If you succumb to weakness, temptation, laziness, you're not going to have a positive self image of yourself, and you're not going to be able to do great things. You have to overcome these things, and you have to push against everything, and you have to face these challenges so that you can view yourself and have a good opinion of yourself. Like I said, it's not about how you die; it's about how you live.
Yeah. No, and something I noticed this whole thing, he did not mention intelligence once.
Yeah, he didn't.
It's all like God rewards courage. He doesn't reward intelligence. He
In
rewards
fact,
acting on. Yeah, courage. It's like you just said, thoughts are inspirations from the supreme intelligence, right? You're given these thoughts, you're given these things to act on, and it's like that's how you get your XP. It's not, oh, I'm so smart, so I'm gonna just be smart. It's like, no, you act on the things that terrify you, and you get better and stronger because of that. That's how you level up.
actually, he could say that intelligence oftentimes hurts you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he says the man with little imagination is less fearful.
Yeah.
He's talking about the guys who love to think about everything and analyze everything, get all this intelligent data gathering on everything before they do anything. The
No,
one,
you need to analyze everything and run data. We gotta look at studies.
right? It's
Bunny
like,
printer go burr.
right,
Fucking
exactly. Like, it's sometimes just some lug nut that's just, he doesn't know everything, but he just knows to run into the wall every single day.
yeah,
Like, it's not, and it, as much as people want success to be based purely off intelligence, it's not. And like humans, we all pride ourselves in intelligence because we feel like that's what separates us from animals, right? And so like you get a lot of guys that think they're smart, or they are smart, they're intelligent, but it's like that's not what the only thing that's going to make it happen for you. Like you got to have a little brute strength in you as well, and a little
yep,
brute force to just be able to go head first into things. Because oftentimes the guys who procrastinate is because they think too much. They're too busy thinking about things and not doing things. And that's exactly what goes on in the world. Everybody's thinking about stuff all the time. Stop thinking, do it. Yeah, you're smart and you got all these great ideas. Okay, we'll put them into play.
100%.
Right?
Put them
So
in the
it's
play,
like,
bro. Put them in the
yeah,
fucking play.
he doesn't mention intelligence once because it's like if you knew better, you'd do better. If you were smart, you just do the work.
You know,
If you're really intelligent,
for some like I feel like every time we do this, we keep coming back to the exact same meta lesson, which is do. There's a huge divide between those that do and those that don't. It just like everything comes down to doing, physically doing something.
right? I mean, literally, we were just talking about this before the call
Yeah,
because we're talking about reading Joe Salatin books and reading all these homesteading books. It's like then you're just sitting there with all this knowledge that you can't do anything about. It's like get yourself in the position to apply things first. That's all that really matters, right? So it's like the first things first is getting all the money up,
yeah. Like
right?
what's
Like
the
you don't need
steps,
to
right?
know everything about permaculture right now. Like yeah, buy land first, you
Yeah,
know. Like
yeah, yeah.
so it's like so a lot of guys like yeah, he doesn't mention intelligence once in it, and like you can
And,
intelligently look for opportunities to be courageous and to push up against any resistance or be disciplined or all the things that we've talked about. But at the end of the day, like thinking is not going to get you out of everything.
yeah, don't let your IQ be an excuse to not grow.
And it's like I do think like and I was like even I think if you do enough studies about like making money, it's like intelligence doesn't really play much of a factor for how rich you're going to be unless you want to be like a billionaire. Like of course like people that are like 70 IQ or 80 IQ in the world like they have a hard time with anything. But like being like a 80 IQ to like a 130 IQ doesn't mean you're necessarily going to make more money than anybody else. There's like people with there's 90 100 IQ plumbers with their own plumbing businesses that made millions of dollars, and there's people with 120 130 140 IQ on Twitter that are like broke.
Yeah,
They can explain all these things to you, but it doesn't matter.
yeah.
One guy would just went and did what he needed to do and never stopped doing it.
And dude, imagine how much of a self cuck you are if you go online and you take a test to get a number from a company, and then now your entire ego and way of being is based on this 3-digit number or 2-digit number.
Right. And it's so funny. Intelligence doesn't get you where you want. Man, like I don't even like using some of these examples, but it's like look at Dan Go. Like he has the most basic vanilla tweets of anybody, right? Like it's not deep, it's not like super introspective, but the dude's like making more money on Twitter than like 99% of people in the world.
Yeah.
And crushing it. And people are making fun of them every day about how plain and vanilla and stupid it is. But is you the dumb one or are you the dumb one? Because you're spending all your time on it and getting nothing out of it. He's spending no time on it and making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of
it. Yeah. Exactly. Right there.
Right? So it's like perfect example of like maybe you ain't as smart as you think you are, or maybe and sometimes obviously intelligence does help you, and I think sometimes I'm not one of those people that says like, oh, well, if you were so smart, you wouldn't be broke, because I don't think that's the only thing that stops people from having money. It could be like work ethic, so like that could be a huge part of it. Some people are just lazy, or drive. Some people aren't driven to make a ton of money. I've got smart friends that are like, they're just not driven to make a bunch of money, but they're very, very intelligent. But anyways, all we're saying is like thinking doesn't help you when it's time to act. Unless like, and then like, the only things you need to think about, you learn by doing things, right? Like when he talks about the sailor and the frontiersman, they only think about certain things and they know what to think about. You have to do things to know what to think about.
Yep.
Right? Like people come to me like when they're starting things, like they're starting jiu-jitsu and they ask me all these questions they think are good questions. I'm like, these aren't even good questions. Like you should actually just start, get some experience, and then when you want to ask me a question, you'll actually be able to ask me a good one.
Yeah, it's like, what's a choke? It's like, okay, let me just choke you out a few times and you'll get it.
Right, like, so it's like you have to, we're told all questions are good questions. They're not. Informed questions are good questions. Like it's like the Dunning-Kruger thing. Like you have to get a little bit of knowledge to realize, oh, I don't know all these other things, and then from that point, you'll start asking specific questions.
Yeah, I mean,
actually leads you closer to your goal.
I mean, bro, you've probably done this at some point where you ask a question kind of just to ask the question and just to like.
It's no, I've literally never done this.
You've never done.
This is why I get on people about it, is because like people want you to hold their hands during things. Like when I wanted to learn about freediving, my friend's a freediver.
Yeah.
Like I learned what it was. I didn't start asking them basic questions about freediving. I literally went and like just researched on YouTube freediving for like a day and a half, and just got all this information about it. And then when I went and talked about it, I had some surface knowledge, so I could actually have a conversation about it with them. So
right.
I've just never been that kind of person. Like to me, smart people are people that you only have to make aware of things.
Yeah.
Like once they're aware of it, they'll go gather a bunch of information, and then they'll come back to you with informed, intelligent questions.
See, I used to, yeah, I didn't. Now I do what you do.
Especially if you have the internet. Like it's like it's not like you're just out here flying blind. Like you have the greatest information tool at your fingertips, and you're just choosing to have what's called like learned helplessness, to just be completely oblivious and know nothing. Like just go and learn the basics everywhere of anything you want to get into. If you want to get into from carpentry or welding or like painting or like dance, figure skating, whatever it is, you can literally just go on the internet and like learn the ABCs of it like in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to give you experience, right? But when you you go find an expert or a teacher, like you're going to be so much further ahead than the person who just goes in there with no knowledge and just completely helpless. Because you're going to be conscious of like things that can go wrong or things that can go right, or things that you are interested in doing, or things that you think you may have a proclivity for, or things that you think you may not be as good at. Like, so I was honestly just never like that. And I think it's because like I never believed that every question is a good question. I felt embarrassed to ask stupid questions. So like whenever I was interested in something, I would go and find out as much as I could about it first, and then I would start asking.
That makes sense. Of course, Lobo, the superhuman.
Well, that's how I got on train and everything. Like I never had to be taught to be the way that I am.
Yeah, you're just built
different, my dad didn't teach me to be this way. My uncles didn't teach me to be this way. Like I didn't have any older brothers or anything like that. Like I just I'm interested in things.
Like, you're just born based.
Well, no, it's just it's not. It's just curiosity.
Yeah.
right? Like I'm curious. Like I want to know things. I'm constantly fascinated by things. Like
Yeah.
everything interests me.
Yeah. No, that's
That,
super key, honestly. A lot of us too, with all of our jobs and all of our responsibilities, we get burnt out. We don't want to like experience. We don't want to go out and experience things anymore. I think it's super limiting. It's super limiting, and it destroys the beauty of life.
like I'm just curious. Like I remember when I was like, I don't know, maybe 9 or something, and like Snapple facts came out. Like those were like you know how Snapple used to have those like
Yeah, the
little
facts underneath
caps
the
of the
cap.
facts. That fascinated me. I was like, man, like I wanted to collect because they used to be numbered. I'd be like, man, I want to collect all of them. I didn't know I was drinking like Zog juice or anything like that, but like I wanted to know what everything was. So
Yeah.
I think like I don't know if there's some. I think there's certain traits that are just natural to some people. Like
Hmm.
I know people don't believe in like personality types or whatever like that, but like my personality type says like I'm a very curious person. So
Yeah.
like it was just something that's inborn in me. It's like my brother is not really like that. He's not really just extremely curious about things. Like he sees something and it's fantastic and he doesn't want to really know any more about it. He just likes the experience of it.
Right.
Right. So it's like and I think some people are more inclined to be more curious than others, but I think you can learn to be curious about things and be interested by everything.
Yeah. The future is run by curious savages.
Right. Like, yeah. So like you I mean fuck, like life is incredible. Like you're
Yeah.
literally playing like the greatest first person video game of all time. Like you can literally do anything pretty much. So it's like it should fascinate you. You should be excited by it to be alive and like I'm still trying to figure out like what wind is and where it comes from. You know, like I'm not like everything is amazing to me. Like why different beaches have different color sands and like I want to know everything. You know,
Mm.
I don't want to be an expert on everything because I know I can't be
Yeah.
right. And like, but I just want to understand as much as I can because what happens is the more you learn, the more you see synchronicity in all things and see the overlap.
Yeah. And you see the beauty and how interconnected everything is. So that's very true.
Right. And the more these things you can categorize and link together, the easier it becomes to understand new things. If I have a superpower, it's to be able to jump into any subject and gain like a top 10% understanding of it in a short amount of time. Like to learn fast. Because I've just gone through the process of starting from beginner to like novice to advanced
So
so
many
many
times.
times and so many different things that like I'm just able to trim the fat and like see the essentials and the fundamentals of everything.
Yep.
And then what happens is like you learn the fundamentals of things and then you learn the complexity of you learn where like all the fundamentals fail, right? Then you learn like all the advanced things to do when the fundamentals fail. And then you realize that all you need was like perfect fundamentals in the beginning. It's
Yep.
like they, you know, like
Chael, the classic Chael Sonnen advice:
right,
basics win championships.
right. I mean, yeah, like Michael Jordan, basic mid range turnaround, mid range jumper. Um, Tim Duncan, basic off the glass. Um, Roger Gracie, basic cross collar choke. Like people just do
Yeah.
simple things extremely well, and that's how they get it done. Like Tom Brady doesn't throw the ball. He doesn't have the biggest arm in the world. Doesn't throw the ball 60 yards down the field. Takes little check downs and everything. It's there. He just does simple things great.
Yeah. Conor McGregor, right? That perfect left hand.
You know, so like yeah, the one little tool like that can get you all the way to the top. Just
Yep.
understanding like one simple fundamental. So like yeah, I look at everything like that, and so I think that and I think it takes some courage to be curious
Hmm.
because you have to be completely comfortable with being humbled and being a beginner at everything. It's a beginner's mindset, right? And it's like it's actually like the peak of humility. I remember uh, this all these Western references. I remember Kanye was saying once that like you have to say that he's humble because he experimented and tried to learn the most of anybody about music. He's like, you
Yeah.
can't call me arrogant because I'm willing to sit down and learn as much as I possibly can
Hmm.
from anything, from anyone,
That's
and
true.
study things for hours. So it's like that's like the opposite of being arrogant, is
Yeah.
being willing to be a student and receive tutelage.
Look what he's
It's,
done.
it's the
Rap,
opposite of thinking you're the best at everything, right?
business, right? Clothing.
Now he's messing with food and like
movies, food, plays,
now he's
farming,
messing with architecture, like
architecture, like education, all these different things. It's crazy.
it's not just curiosity.
Shall we end with the poem, George and the Diver?
Yeah, so it's funny before he even writes the poem, quotes the poem. He says, "I am permitted to enrich my chapter by adding an anecdote of pure courage from real life, as narrated in a ballad by a lady to whom all the particulars of the fact are exactly known."
Men have done brave deeds, and bards have sung them well. I have good George and the Diver. Now the tale will tell. In California mountains, a hunter bold was he, keen as eye and sure as aim, as any you should see. A little Indian boy followed him everywhere, eager to share the hunter's joy, the hunter's meal to share. And when the bird or deer fell by the hunter's skill, the boy was always near to help with right goodwill. One day, as through the cleft between two mountains steep, shut in both right and left, their questing way they keep. They see two grizzly bears with hunger fierce and fell, rush at them in unawares, right down the narrow dell. The boy turned round with screams and ran with terror wild. One of the pair of savage beasts pursued the shrieking child. The hunter raised his gun. He knew one charge was all, and through the boy's pursuing foe he sent his only ball. The other on George and the Diver came on with dreadful pace. The hunter stood unarmed and met him face to face. I say unarmed he stood against those frightful paws. The rifle butt or club of wood could stand no more than straws. George and the Diver stood still and looked him in the face. The wild beast stopped amazed, then came with slackening pace. Still firm the hunter stood, although his heart beat high. Again the creature stopped and gazed with wondering eye. The hunter met his gaze, nor yet an inch gave way. The bear turned slowly round and slowly moved away. What thoughts were in his mind, it would be hard to spell. What thoughts were in George and the Diver, I'd guess, then tell. But sure that rifle's aim, swift choice of generous part, showed in its passing gleam the depths of a brave heart.